Capital Markets Authority, as part of the capital markets development, has really been in the final stages of drafting regulations to cater for the real estate investment trusts. So we are looking at development real estate investment trust, and we are also looking at the traditional real estate investment trusts, which are really unit trusts, which have a real estate segment that allows investors to really receive returns on investment. So, but given Vision 2030 and the objectives that we have under that, we thought it would also be prudent, given the housing needs in our country. As you know, they are much more than what we have as compared to other countries. The housing needs are much more greater, in as much as Kenya has been rated as one of the highest destinations for real estate returns.
Stella, you mentioned the need to promote new capital markets products, and recently you licensed the first ethical funds. Kindly share more details on this.
We only realized during the infrastructure bond that was issued by the government from 2009 February, there was a component which was called sukuk for the Islam community. But what else can we do? So we actually invited them for roundtable discussions, and we've been engaging with them. So there's a gentleman who's called the father of investment banking and Islamic banking. We engaged with him also extensively and his institution, and based on that, we did license the first investment bank in 2011. That is an Islamic investment bank. And it has now since also determined to engage in fund management. And that's the company that also issued the first ethical fund.
There are also plans by the capital markets to develop a futures market in Kenya. What is the latest on this front?
What we did at the authority is really work with our Ministry of Finance, because that was really the parent driver that was helping us drive this from a policy perspective. And it actually chaired the committee that was looking at futures market. So what we did is really come up through that particular committee with the policy issues that relate to futures market. Exposures were undertaken. Again, we have to understand how these markets work before we even think about how to implement them in our country. So exposures were undertaken to Brazil, Mauritius, India, as well as, I believe, Ethiopia. Again, obviously knowing there's no futures market, but really from their perspective of looking at the commodities exchange, because it is part of futures.
With the coming on board of the East African community, are we likely to see regional capital markets coming together and even perhaps harmonizing some of the regulations to attract more capital in the region?
Yes, as you know, East African community just attained 10 years this year. In about February, we attained 10 years of the East African community. And it is critical that we all undertake concerted efforts to bring all these great ideas to fruition. I am glad to report that there has been harmonization already undertaken. As you know, 7 companies or so are cross-listed, of the Kenyan companies are cross-listed across East Africa, with the newest ones, 2 of them being cross-listed in Rwanda. We have been working with Burundi. At the last meeting of capital markets regulators, we actually met in Burundi. And as you know, I was a chairperson of the East African, what you call IASRA, the East African Security Regulators Association, from 2008 to 2010. And during that period is when we actually went to see Burundi and talked about having a capital markets desk, for the country, and that was accepted. And last year, Burundi actually signed an MOU where we actually they are now members of IASRA. So based on that, we are working with them to actually come up with a strategic plan and an implementation plan which does not require, reinventing the wheel, and really just maximizing on all our best practices with all the other 4 countries.
Now, the CMA has also been pushing through the issue of demutualization of the Nairobi Securities Exchange. What is the status currently?
a lot has been undertaken, and we've seen, you know, the company registering as a new company, which is a demutualized entity. We've also seen recently the appointment of new board members that will actually drive the demutualized securities exchange. On our end, we continue working with the Nairobi Securities Exchange on areas to do, especially with its self-regulatory functions, because it will have to undertake two dual functions. And I'm glad to say that the recent Capital Markets Amendments Bill 2011 that was assented into by the President did recognize the self-regulatory organization. So we are looking at both the Futures Exchange as well as the Nairobi Securities Exchange being self-regulatory organizations, and eventually the CBSE also.